What's up, investors? It's the Russian dude. In 2014, while the Kremlin started selling itself as a security guru, one of the very first songs trying to baptize the war was created. It was called Rise Donbas, with a catchy chorus strapped to the fairy tale. It also then named cities like Druzhkivka, Sloviansk and Kramatorsk as children who needed to be saved. A decade later, those same cities are obliterated with craters, funerals and evacuation routes. The Kramatorsk metropolitan area, once a normal working region of roughly 500,000, was turned into a stage for somebody else's mythology. Putin's new story says the conflict began in Sloviansk and must end with the conquest of what remains of Donetsk. But the real story is simpler and unfortunately much uglier. The advancement stalls, towns flatten, and the rescue is indistinguishable from destruction. So today, let's strip this Donetsk anthem written by Russians to its wires. We will follow the story from engineered legend to a very real human catastrophe, show how fabricated horror displays documented crimes, revisit Sloviansk and Kramatorsk, and talk about the most recent decision of Putin in regard to these cities. For now, and hopefully forever, the cities are under Ukrainian control, but the push of the Russian military still persists. What awaits these key cities? Was it all for nothing? These are some very crucial questions that demand immediate answers. The Donbas War was not a spontaneous event. It was built, lyric by lyric, broadcast by broadcast, until TV turned a region into a morality play. Sloviansk, a component of the Kramatorsk metro, became Act 1. Then came Mariupol's grim milestone. On January 24, 2015, MLRS rounds from separatist-held territories slammed to the Vostochny neighborhood. 31 dead, 117 injured, most of them Russian speakers in a city that was nearly half ethnic Russian by self-identification and overwhelmingly Russian-speaking in daily life. Moscow's broadcasters looked away. They had a script. Donetsk besieged by Kiev. Rebels as paladins, an exchange of fire deleted from the dictionary completely. It was said then, and it remains true now more than ever, that if your shells are shredding the people you claim to protect, you are simply not defending them, you are punishing them, you're killing them. Bakhmut held a Remembrance Day for its dead after the February 13th strike. That grief never made the primetime edits, because acknowledging that both sides fired would remove the veil of "we are defending ourselves." And the narrative will become much more complicated than to sell. Then the pattern fortunately worsened. The more the front line advanced across Ukrainian, mostly Russian-speaking cities, the louder the TV insisted it was liberation. The wider the gap between life on the ground and life on the screen, the more insistently the myth had to be repeated and sold. By the time war machinery rolled back towards the Kramatorsk area again in 2022, the anthem had already become the alibi. It was basically saying the following: "See, told you, we are trying to protect our people. Donbas was harassed by Ukrainians for 8 years. We had enough. It is time we do something about it." Now you guys know exactly where this narrative came from. But how can propaganda make people believe that killing them is actually saving them? Is it really that strong, the propaganda? Or are people that innocently stupid? Let's try to figure this out in our next chapter. Myths need monsters. When reality fails to provide them, propagandists manufacture them. On April 12, 2014, Igor Girkin-Strelkov crossed from Russia's Rostov region into Sloviansk with armed men and installed a rule that looked like a medieval morality play. Executions without trial, dressed in emergency justice, questionable slogans covering lawlessness, and a militia styling itself as the Russian Orthodox Army, that then conveniently for them tortured and murdered 4 parishioners: Vladimir Velichko, Viktor Bradarsky, and the Pavenko brothers. Those names exist, those were real people, unfortunately. Those families mourned, that crime is now recorded, but it mostly went unpunished. To hide such facts, the Kremlin's minds needed something louder and more theatrical. That's why enter Alexander Dugin's post about Ukrainian troops executing all men under 35 in Sloviansk. Just like this, no questions asked, no passport show, nothing. Just you look under 35, that's it, you're done. Source? Trust me, bro. And then the infamous Channel 1 crucified boy story aired twice without a single legitimate witness, photo or document. Just somebody who my cousin knows, who told my colleague, and I just overheard it while reheating my lunch on a business trip in Turkey. That's how the story became real. Horrors is clickbait, basically. Trauma is glue. The point was not truth. The point was to paralyze doubt by making something completely outrageous. Then the record scratched. In June 2015, Gazeta.ru published Sloviansk 1 year after Girkin's incursion article. No crucifixions, no mass ethnic purges, curfew even lifted, humanitarian aid arrived, Lenin statues gone, courts issuing suspended sentences to many who had cooperated. Was it imperfect? Absolutely. Just a genocidal purge of Russian speakers then? Not even remotely, of course. The myth cracked because the most pro-Russian explanation, which is daily life returning under Kiev, was the one cameras never showed. Consider Nelia Stepa, for example, Sloviansk former mayor. Pro-Putin, arrested and tried, later compensated for alleged rights violations, and then allowed to run for office and win a council seat, and finally finishing third in the mayoral race, where the top two were pro-Russian opposition candidates. Compare that messy clownship with Russia's elections on any level, where posting the wrong symbol or using the wrong colors, specifically blue and yellow for some reason, well, apparently it gets you erased from the society and there is no way you can ever participate in anything politics related. Which side looks like a fascist junta to you guys and which side looks like a fragile democracy under bombardment? You tell me the answer to this, I would say, extremely easy question. In our next chapter, let's focus more on two center cities of today's episode, Sloviansk and Kramatorsk. What is happening there right now and where is it most likely going? Strip away the speeches and listen to the residents. One person writes, Sloviansk is under constant shelling. Pokrovsk and Konstantinovka are wars. A family of 5, teen, toddler, mother, 95-year-old grandmother, they just want to live for good. Her husband has been on the front lines since day one. There is a glimmer of hope it ends before they reach us, they say, but they're headed for Sloviansk, which means our little world will be over soon. Another resident who was living in that region corrects the numbers, saying that Sloviansk and Kramatorsk together housed over 250,000 people pre-2022. Many fled, but their apartments still stand, for now, at least some of them. But as you begin to flatten entire blocks, the irreversible damage occurs. Scale it to the full metropolitan area, roughly 500,000 before the war, and you see the true scale of human catastrophe. And here is what territory for peace proponents like to ignore. People are not furniture. They're not just material things. No one is asking Sloviansk residents whether they want Donetsk People Republic rule. Very few are eager to entrust their homes and livelihoods to Denis Pushilin, a former Ponzi scheme pitchman turned overlord thanks to Putin, who has already presided over property seizures from factories to apartments. The Kremlin imagines a clean handover, and this is what Putin recently demanded in regards to these two cities, his one of the most recent decisions. Basically saying, just hand us Sloviansk and Kramatorsk without a fight or else. Everyone will be better if you just surrender. Property seized or re-registered. Work not possible without a Russian passport. Citizenship issued as naturalization and revocable without a court order. Just one single complaint away from legal vaporization and then no Ukrainian, not Russian, you're just nobody. Pushilin's machine has learned to decorate theft. Yesterday factories and cafe, today private apartments, tomorrow entire blocks. What's left for regular people is to film a video petition declaring loyalty to Putin in the second sentence, just to avoid punishment for simply speaking. And still to be ignored completely. Even Pavel Gubaryov, a founding figure of the DPR, now suggests redrawing the annexation lines to match the current active front lines, an admission that maximalist maps demand maximalist blood. But Moscow's project is not cartography, it's conquest. Pokrovsk has been bleeding for over a year. If it falls, the Kramatorsk metro is next. Expect months, maybe years of block-by-block grinding that extinguishes brigades and reserves alike. Every kilometer will be measured in funerals, broadcast then as heroism, because arithmetic itself in Putin's Russia is treason. Even a pro-war blogger snarled that counting casualties is very treacherous. And then he fumbled an exaggerated claim about the Berlin offensive to argue that national goals trump individual lives. Here is one big difference though. Berlin 1945 was the final battle against a Nazistic regime that declared war on the entire world. Sloviansk and Kramatorsk are simply Russian-speaking cities that did not attack Russia, and once even voted in legal elections for pro-Russian parties. But the outcome for Berlin 1945 and Sloviansk and Kramatorsk is similar, unfortunately. Total destruction. You don't shell your people and call it salvation. I mean, it is that simple. Before 2022, the Kremlin could have won Donbas by doing nothing dramatic. Believe it or not. Eastern cities routinely delivered strong votes for pro-Russian parties. People who preferred closer ties to Russia expressed it in ballots, not in barricades. They went to work, paid mortgages, built small businesses, sent kids to school. Ordinary life, basically. If the goal was friendly leverage, you cherish the friendliest Russian-speaking region on earth. You don't crater it. But autocracy requires dramatic spectacle. It just simply cannot live without enemies, so it fabricates them. It cannot admit complexity, so it redraws 1920s administrative borders as its destiny, as something that will happen. It cannot tolerate thinking otherwise, so it insists that Sloviansk living normally under Kiev was a blasphemy requiring rescue. The result is a step-by-step plan for erasure. Filtration lists, revocable passports, property registries rewritten, schools rescripted, police retrained, courts massacred. The system already functions in Donetsk and Mariupol, where naturalized residents discover their rights are conditional and that their property is negotiable, can be literally just given to somebody else with no questions asked. Ship that model to Kramatorsk and just call it governance. Well, that is the idea that Kremlin has, I guess. Meanwhile, speaking about the same territory for peace proponents, they simply refuse to even follow their own argument to the end. What happens to the hundreds of thousands who fled? Well, they think they just need to book a trip, present yourself in Moscow, pass filtration and just reclaim your keys to the brand new shiny apartment. Simple, right? The practice, unfortunately, says fail for any invented reason and enjoy a 50-year ban, cannot enter Russia, cannot enter Ukraine, who cares? If your home stones, it belongs to somebody else, now along with a stamped paper created yesterday to prove it. And if you state, your past employment marks you suspect, if you speak up, your new passport can evaporate. All of this is delivered by a state that calls these protecting Russians. Find me a more anti-Russian policy than that. I dare you guys. I mean, that's ridiculous. It is now worth again remembering 2014. Many in Sloviansk, Toretsk, Konstantinovka and Bakhmut disliked Euromaidan and preferred closer ties with Russia, yet still chose to remain part of Ukraine. Girkin himself complained locals will never fill his ranks. Why? Because they knew militia rule meant extortion, checkpoints and artillery seasons. They wanted to settle their country's argument with ballots and time, not imported war. That nuance had to be killed so the myth could live. And so here we are. 2025 again, with Pokrovsk bleeding, Kramatorsk in the crosshairs, and Moscow's TV sets still using World War II narratives. The euphemisms are awfully familiar: neutralization, filtration, stabilization. The result is similar too: basements, sirens, displacement, and a million private tragedies that never get a segment because they simply don't rhyme with victory. The song we began with this video asked Donbas to rise. The people did. By living, voting, working, raising kids, burying their dead. It is just that they do not need another savior. They need the saviors to live. Well, there you have it, guys. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe to my channel for more videos like this. If you wish to support our work, you can become a Patreon member and receive an additional chapter at the end. The link is down below. Thanks so much for watching. See you tomorrow.
We won't succumb to their tricks, the facade they try to sell. Their twisted words and feeble claims are resolved they cannot quell. We see through their lies, their feeble attempts to sway. We do not believe